CarLifestyle podcast
with host
Seth Rose from Exotics Rally,
TMINUS, Gabe Florido
from CarLifestyle.
Welcome back to the CarLifestyle podcast with my wonderful host TMINUS, who can't keep the volume down on his laptop today. TMINUS, say hello.
TMINUS up in this motherfucker.
I'm Seth Rose, and tonight, or today, or whenever you're listening to this out there, we have a very special guest, the infamous, the elusive, the incredibly entertaining Mr. Alex Roy.
Pleased to be here, Seth.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to have you here, and actually to have you here, we're in your fucking house, actually. So anyway, thank you for inviting us into your home to record this podcast, in your eclectic home, I should add.
His shit is dope.
To give our listeners a little visual, we are surrounded not only by an incredible audio system, but many
the car alone is
unique animals that are stuffed, and
we got bears and machine guns. Shit is real,
and they are looking kind of menacing. In any event,
I also have a mean sword collection.
he also has a Bob Ross fucking painting with a giant rainbow flag that he bought in Chelsea.
You really have a Bob Ross painting?
No, it's the poster for the movie Dreams
Jesus
by
Christ.
Akira
He believes in
Kurosawa.
Bob Ross, but no aliens.
I watched Bob Ross growing
Of
up.
course, because he was like the only Jew on TV. He loved it.
Well, he was a happy little bush. I mean, come on, that was my man.
Oh, happy little bush.
Yes, it was a happy little bush. Anyway, we're here with Alex Roy, and we're here to discuss, all things automotive and all things that are equal. Alex was one of the record holders of the Transcontinental Rally, or I should say competitive drive from New York City to Portofino or Redondo Beach,
I've never
California.
been to Portofino in my life.
Okay, so Redondo Beach,
Never
California.
been there either.
Yeah, okay.
But we can talk about that.
We'll talk about it. And until our guest, Ed Bolian, a couple of weeks ago, had described his time of 28 hours and 50 minutes, Alex held the record for how long?
I guess 6 years?
6 years, and the record was?
Mine was 31 hours and 4 minutes.
Okay. So, Alex Alex was involved in many rallies. I'm only going to name a few. He can go into details on some of the others, but he was an avid bull runner for many years. I participated in Gumball Rally, and I think you participated in a few others as well.
I did the Londino and Bull Run Europe, and
Okay.
that's it. I think that is it.
And you've been involved in some local charity fundraising regarding cars and automotive shows, talks, lectures, and
And the TV show, The Ultimate Playboy.
the Ultimate Playboy TV show, which I never got to see.
We can talk about that. There was an automotive component.
Oh, excellent. And I met Alex several years ago. I think it was around 2000. I could be wrong on this, but I think it was around 2009 when you did your book launch.
2000. Actually, I think 2000. End of 2007.
End of 2007. Wow, I am getting old. Anyway, in 2007, that's when I first met Alex, when we all got together. At the time, it was the New York Motor Club. Mm-hmm. And I actually received a book signed, and I still have it. I'm treasuring that. And that's when Alex was asking each person when he was signing the book, so what kind of car do you drive? And when I told him what kind of car, he stopped for 2 seconds, turned to me and said, hey, maybe we could do something. Because at the time, it was an Ariel Atom. And Alex said, I've always wanted to go from either New York to Miami or from Alaska to Miami. Maybe we could do it in the Ariel Atom. I'll set it all up. I'll rig it. I'll do this. I'll do that. And nothing ever came of it. And I actually sold that car. But it was kind of an interesting idea. And I've always been fascinated with the rallies cross country, and having attempted it once myself and been involved in many of the road rallies as well. It's always intrigued me, and hence the reason why we've had Ed Bolian on, and now we are here to interrogate you about all your endeavors.
I'll answer any question you've got.
Okay, can we start with what's the Wi-Fi?
On the podcast?
No, right here. Yeah. What's the Wi-Fi?
It's AR. I'll change it after the podcast is done recording. Reminder, Seth, that the whole point of the Ariel Atom back then was that since it's an open frame car, I really wanted to create a website for the International Furrier and Trapper Racing Coalition, and then we would dress in fur, maybe real, and cover the car in fur and use like a fur insulation, and then kind of spray like red paint around the car and wear like horned Viking helmets, and then claim to be sponsored by trappers and furriers.
Interesting. You know, there's a group. I think they call them the the furriers or something like that. There's a group of like wackos that run around dressed up as
Rappers?
no. There's wackos that dress up as in fur as costumes,
Where?
and they
The Solomons?
nope,
They're
it's not
called
them.
Eskimos.
No. I think there's this eclectic group that dresses up as them.
You are very prejudiced, my friend.
I am not. I just have a certain thing against aliens, but we'll get into that later.
Oh my
So-
God! You don't.
So going forward,
you can't have a thing against them if they don't exist.
true, and they don't.
Right. So then, how do you have something against them?
We'll get to that later.
There was a time when explorers in the colonial era would go to parts of the world where no one had ever seen ice. And when they tried to describe ice, they were unable to do so. Seth,
I'm here.
much like aliens, ice was something that was inconceivable to the native peoples in some parts of the world.
And you know this how?
Like metallurgy and... Well, to quote, who wrote 2001 Space Odyssey? It's suddenly escaping me.
George Lucas, Star Wars?
No, Stanley Kubrick.
No, he directed the film. In any case, the author said, and it's a great quote to remember because I'm a big sci-fi nerd, and suddenly I can't remember one of my favorite authors. He said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So think about, the first firearms being shown to like Native American Indians, and the first ironclad warships against galleons, and then imagine yourself looking up at the stars from your convertible, and thinking there's no aliens. It's very hard to fathom.
Okay. Well, we're amongst another conspiracy theorist here besides TMINUS, and I'm definitely outnumbered tonight. So,
So yeah, what do you got to say?
let's move on to automotive. So,
Of course.
So, Alex, let's talk about your transcontinental run, and let's talk about the differences between your run and Ed Bolian's run. I know it's an ongoing dispute and an ongoing topic amongst a lot of gearheads, and the proofs that have been listed by different people have been challenged over the years.
Okay, so recently I built a spreadsheet of all the cross-country records claimed going back to 1915, starting with Cannonball Baker himself, who set, I think, 5 or 6 cross-country records. The first was 271 hours, and eventually went down to 55 hours. And incredibly, I was unable to find any evidence that Cannonball Baker had done any of those times. So if the spreadsheet shows 6 columns of different types of evidence. So you have a time clock with a punch card, for example.
Right.
You have toll receipts. You have third-party witnesses. Who let's define third-party witness: someone who doesn't work with or for the driver. And someone who does not know the driver and never knew the driver before.
An independent witness.
Yeah, an independent witness. Then you have video, stills, GPS. That's 6.
Just going back to the first couple of them.
Yeah.
When you say, a time clock.
Right.
What would be an appropriate time clock? Is there anything defined as an appropriate time clock? Would it be a time-stamped piece of paper?
The type of clock used, say, at a place of employment, which is sealed, and then the same clock is used at the start and finish line, and some form of media is punched the timestamp that with third-party witnesses present for both stampings.
Okay.
So by any measure, Cannonball Baker had nothing. Maybe at best he might have had third-party witnesses for the later runs because he had sponsors, and back then manufacturers would sponsor him to go in different cars.
And how long ago was that?
1915 through 1933. Was kind of the heyday of his cross-country records.
Gotcha.
I think there was a later one. I can't remember the exact year. So if you look at the times, if you talk to people from the Madison Avenue Sports Car Club and Chowder Society, of which Brock Yates was a member for many years, and a lot of guys did Cannonball are members, and you talk to them, it's like a room full of serial killers accusing each other of lying about the number of victims. Nobody believes anybody, even among the veteran cannonballers today. And there's a lot of accusations flying about the first cannonball. People forget, Brock Yates went across country twice in 1971. He went alone on a test drive, in the first Moontrash, Dodge van, and then he went across again with Dan Gurney, right? 3554.
Which for all intents and purposes in those years is pretty incredible.
It's pretty
considering
incredible.
the lack of technology.
And in many ways it's incredible. So if you look back at the times on the actual cannonball, it was very, very sloppy. I have not yet found anyone who can tell me for a fact that they are even sure of what kind of timekeeping occurred and evidentiary standards occurred on the cannonball itself. So think about how many people did the cannonball. They have a mountain of third-party witnesses. Time clock, not so much. Inconsistent. No one's seen the cards. No one knows who kept the clock. No one knows anything about it. There's some stills. No video. No GPS didn't exist at the time.
Right.
Receipts, sloppy. The whole thing, no one can say for sure. And please contact me, contact Seth if you know for a fact that any of the cannonball times are actually verifiable by any means.
And if anybody has those time slips hidden somewhere in a vault,
I've yet to hear about it. And
I'd love to see them.
I've had conversations with a number of cannonballers, and they all say, who cares? It wasn't about the time, which is an important message as a context for this whole conversation. Then you get into the US Express, which was the spin-off race of the Cannonball run by a guy named Rick Doherty. Rick Doherty is the only person ever in the history of any of this to take any of this seriously and plan, organize, and execute a completely illegal cross-country race in a professional manner. Rick Doherty's co-pilot was Will Wright, who was the developer of the Sims game, SimCity, in the late 80s.
Oh, I remember that one.
Will Wright and Rick Doherty won the first US Express in a Ferrari 308. Now, Rick Doherty is the closest thing you'd have as like a one-man FIA for such events. Doherty had everything. They had 2 clocks flown from the start line to the finish line, multiple third-party witnesses. There was video. There were stills. There were receipts. They hit I think a 5 data point threshold. So they had everything except GPS because it didn't exist at the time.
Didn't exist.
Absolutely the highest threshold of proof. And there were still, despite all that evidence, still people who thought there was cheating going on. People didn't believe that David Deman and Doug Turner in 1983 in the last Express had done 3207. People didn't see them for most of the run. And it wasn't until the 3207 film came out a couple of years ago, and that's another topic, until the producer of that film, who shall remain unnamed in this podcast, uncovered video from a spotter plane that David Deman and Doug Turner had hired to shoot video of them going. It wasn't until that footage was shown to the Express drivers from 83 that any of them believed that red Ferrari 308 actually went cross-country at all. I heard accusations as recently as last week that the 1981 Express winners, which was Steve Klausman and David Morse in a Porsche 928, who were respected veterans, that they had 2 cars. And there are people who believe that and think that they have evidence to that effect. And this is on the event with the maximum threshold of evidence.
Right.
So then you move forward after the Express ends, and you get into people, it's Magic Johnson or one of these guys claiming he went across in 33 or something. No evidence. Then you get into, my attempt with David Maher. And, when I was first approached about writing a book about this, it was before I even thought it was possible to do so. And the fact checkers at HarperCollins and my agent, William Morris, and my attorney, and the New York Times and Wired Magazine, all of them said, well, how can you prove it? And I went through the history of evidentiary standards. And I showed them what had been done previously, and they said, you need to meet the 5-point threshold, or we won't publish this book. The book, A Million Little Pieces, had come out, and the author was on Oprah, and his scandal had broken about that being faked around the same time that my book was approaching draft completion. And I was told that my contract would be canceled. The book would not be released unless I could produce names and phone numbers of every person in the book, which is something like 275 people. Phone numbers for every single one of them. Luckily, I had phone numbers for everybody, and I also had video and recordings of 99% of the conversations of the book. So every piece of dialogue in there, like 99%.
So they actually did their due diligence to prove everything before anything was released.
7 months of fact checking.
Wow.
Before they would agree. And around that time, between my breaking the record in October of 2006 and the publication of the book in October 2007, it was leaked. So Richard Rawlings found out that I had attempted it. And I had created a disinformation campaign to convince him that I had failed in order to dissuade him from trying, because I truly believed that he could do it. He was the only person alive at the time I thought could do it. And he, having heard that I had failed, was not dissuaded by my failure and decided to make an attempt, or so he claims.
Right.
So before my book came out, during that summer, he went public and said he had done 3159.
Yeah. And in fact, he has a tattoo to prove it.
Yes, he has a tattoo to prove it. And he was, I heard, booked on Jay Leno.
Yes.
And then right around the time he was booked on Jay Leno, we were approaching my announcement date, which was October 10th or 19th of 2007. His Jay Leno, his segment that was recorded was canceled. It never aired. And the rumor, and I've heard this from multiple people, is that he couldn't pass the fact checker, and that the fact checkers over there at Leno had heard that this other Roy guy was coming down the pike and was booked on Letterman, and that we did pass the fact checkers.
Right, you were on Letterman.
Right. This is a rumor. So this is conjecture. So he made a big stink about our time, saying that the route was different, and we can talk about that as well, because it was different. But we're talking about evidentiary standards. So moving forward, I was always certain that 3104 was breakable, and I knew I could have driven faster. But I personally had no desire to try. It was the thing. So we move on to Ed Bolian.
Let me interrupt. On your attempt, were you trying to just break the record or shatter the record, or it didn't matter to you as long as you broke the record?
We didn't believe the record was breakable on the first attempt. The 3207 film was not intended to be a film about breaking the record. It was a documentary about the history of the U.S. Express, and the record time 3207. Because so many drivers believed 3207 was a hoax, that the documentary was intended to be a proof or disproof of that time. And I suggested to the producer that the best way to prove or disprove that time is to see if it's possible to come anywhere close to it. Brock Yates in 2002 stated that 36 hours would be difficult, 30 hours impossible. So using 3207 as the target, we said if we could approach anything under 35, we have a movie. So in December 2005, we prepped the car, no fuel cell, no night vision, no plane. We went across maybe a month's preparation. We got across in 3446. And so it was quite clear when we got to LA that 3207 was possible, and 30 maybe. So I created a spreadsheet, and 3107 was the target, a 1 hour difference. And
you basically hit your target.
We hit our target. And the fact that we hit the target indicated that had I made a faster target, we might have hit that. And that it was very clear to me in the years that followed, but I had no desire to go after that time. It's difficult and expensive and dangerous, and it's also, for me, it was a thing. And I'm glad I did that thing. But I would have been equally proud had we gone and in 32 or 33.
Right.
Because it wasn't the time that mattered. No one was doing this. I just come out of 6 years and a dozen rallies full of guys dreaming of a cannonball run for real. But instead of even trying, they're paying $50, $100 to go to a bunch of parties.
Right.
And I didn't understand that at all. At all.
I still don't understand it, and I've done it.
Now I've done it, and I love it, but it's not anything like going across country in a race. It's nothing like that. It is like that for an hour at a time or 2 hours. Some of the early gumballs in 2004, 2005, really, in my point, the high water mark of such events did approach what Cannonball must have been like for maybe 12 to 24-hour stretches, because there were 24-hour stretches in Africa, in Eastern Europe, which were hair-raising and way faster than anything on the Cannonball. But you didn't have the police presence. It was different. It was like high-speed chess, whereas Cannonball is more like, it's like roulette every minute. It's like rolling roulette every minute, and if you lose, you're out. Different from Gumball.
And you
Totally
pay the
different.
price.
And you pay the price. Totally different. But people who pretend that Gumball isn't a race, well, there are on Gumball, anyone who doesn't believe this is a liar and hasn't done it. If you've done it, you know that there are 5 to 8 guys on every one of these rallies, certainly through 2006 and 2007, who are treating it like Le Mans. They are there.
Oh, absolutely.
There was no doubt. And
I experienced it on Bull Run. I mean, I don't know about the years that you did Bull Run, but I know that when I came on to Bull Run, and we were talking about it earlier over dinner, that I'm extremely competitive. Mm-hmm. And I made the rally so much more competitive that people started driving way faster than they ever did. The organizers asked me several times to slow down. They promised me, I'll give you first place, please. You just have to slow down. Even halfway through the rally, they said, you have it already. We don't want anything bad to happen. And, I'm just competitive in nature, but a lot of these rallies have become much faster over the years. Like you said, there's always a core group of people who feel they're on a track and they're just going for blood.
Yes.
And it can be extremely dangerous.
And there's no vetting. This is not a real sport. It's not professional. It's not a sport. Right. It's not intended. It shouldn't be a sport. I'm amazed that people complain about Bolian or myself or anyone who goes cross country alone with years of prep and a massive budget and things to live for. Complain about that, but don't actively campaign about these road rally events, which are way more dangerous.
Way more dangerous. On top of that, I mean, there's never been I've been on a lot of rallies, never a tech inspection. Who knows how these cars are?
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are just, they're taking their weekend, cruiser that they go to a car show in, throw some decals on it, and all of a sudden they think they're Mario Andretti.
I'll tell you a story I haven't told anywhere, I think. On Gumball, certainly 2005, 2006, 2007, the last three, which were all in Europe, I saw on every rally at least 2 accidents which were never made public, where the cars were destroyed, and often civilian cars were destroyed, no injuries, and there was active collusion by multiple drivers and staff to make sure that accident wasn't in the press.
Right.
And with the cars either replaced or the cars allegedly broke down, quote unquote, broke down with the same car number placed on a rental car, where the civilian crash victims were given a new car, to go away. It was common. Yeah. I've seen it multiple times.
It happened on Bull Run in 2011.
So
that happened, and everything went hush hush. In fact, that's still not over, and now I think they're just going to trial on it.
Are you referring to the video which surfaced about the hit and run in Florida?
Yes.
Well, we can talk about that to the extent that I know about it, and I know a bit.
I was there.
So
I experienced it. It was interesting. And there were several versions of that video.
Yes, there were.
That appeared.
I saw one right after it was shot, and I advised the person who showed it to me that they should probably give it to the authorities, or they just should delete it.
Or destroy it, yeah.
Yeah, but if they do anything else with it, they are running a very rough moral zone that I didn't want to be even part of in any way.
Agreed.
In any way.
I mean, and that's a huge problem in today's society, is video. I mean, still pictures are one thing, video proof is another. And there is just so much video evidence out there just for anything, any type of car accident. I mean, there are so many pictures online from that Wrecked Exotics website.
Yeah, it's pornography of the worst sort.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and I might have said this a couple of times, but not for many years and not in a seriously direct way, but I'd say it to you, and I think TMINUS would really agree with this one. Before we went across, I thought about all the speeding tickets I'd ever gotten, and I thought about the few accidents I'd been in, and I knew it was quite clear I don't have kids now or then, that all I had to live for. I owned a business, I owned my apartment. There were risks I was willing to take, risks I wasn't willing to take, and prior in my life, if I'd received a speeding ticket, I'd fight it just on principle, but it's a very selfish principle, a principle of I don't want to pay the speeding ticket, I don't want the points, but I was always guilty. Always guilty. Now here I was going to go do something dangerous, and I could kill myself or others. I knew that if I had an extra second to make the choice to kill 2 people or just one, be myself, I picked the one because it's on me. I didn't want to take anyone with me. I was willing to fail rather than take a risk that was beyond the scope of the time. And when David Maher and I crack jokes and he calls me a coward, he's referring to my decisions in those moments. Everyone recognizes I'm the slower of the 2 guys in the car, no matter who I'm with. I'm always the slower guy.
Right. Well, you've never claimed to be a good driver.
I would say I'm a very competent driver and very focused and determined towards a goal. And the goal is not always to win. It's to finish safely. Always. And I've always finished every event I've ever done. Always finished. So before I went across, I met with my lawyer, and we drafted a press release in the event of an accident. he was going to release, and in the event of my being arrested because of an accident where I injured someone else. And my plan, full on, was to plead guilty to anything I was charged with and to admit my responsibility. So let's compare that to someone, say, like Afro Duck.
Afro Schmuck?
We've exchanged some
Is
messages.
that Afro Duck or Afro Schmuck?
My objection to Afro Duck is the same objection I have to anyone who does these events and takes risks with people's lives. If you're doing this, these are the laws. If you know you're breaking them, you should admit your guilt and with an explanation. Don't plead not guilty and then make up excuses for it.
Right. And blame everybody else in the world for your own.
This is a selfish act. It's also an awesome act. I don't mean awesome like cool. Awesome as in awe-inspiringly foolish, but requiring a colossal amount of dedication, time, and money, and professionalism to get there at any speed, in one piece, in one car, without support, on two people. It's very difficult at any time. Forget what the record is. And so the kind of person who does that, logically, is the kind of person who understands the responsibility and the consequences.
And the risk involved. Yeah.
Which is why Richard Doherty on the US Express reduced the field from 69 teams on the Cannonball 79. The Express, it was 10 to 15 teams. Everyone on that run was married or had a business or a home or children and something to live for and treated it deadly seriously. It's completely opposite of the type of people who go on the gumball today. If these people have things to lose and just want to get there and be part of a group that is psychologically different and out just beyond the limit of civic society. In the same way that people smoke pot, we all laugh about it, about the degree of it not being so serious compared to like other drugs. Well, that's kind of how the Cannonballers or the US Express guys felt, and where they were really serious people who knew they were crossing the line, willing to accept responsibility for what they were doing if it was the case. And I took that to the logical limit when we drafted that press release. So whatever I say about Ed Bolian, and let me be clear, I believe he did it, but I have reasonable doubt. Once you let's apply the standard of the US Express to Bolian and myself and anyone else out there who's thinking about this. If this was a legal sport, which it never will be, but if it was,
never legal,
there would be a
never
governing body, and there would be a set of rules and evidentiary standards that were incontrovertible. So we're committing crimes. So in order to we know we're committing crimes. If you're committing crimes and you are charged to be convicted, there must be a sufficient level of evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, a preponderance of the evidence to convict you. There is no better way of proving your cross-country time than to be convicted of it.
That's for sure.
So, if you want to prove you did it, you need to make public enough evidence to convict you. The only way to avoid that is to release it more than a year after you do it.
Right.
So I released more than enough evidence to convict me.
Wimp.
More than a year after I did it. And
so why not admit it? And take it on the chin.
So if you release evidence less than sufficient for a prosecutor to go after you in the zone of the arrest period, and there's not enough evidence for the authorities to care, that doesn't meet an evidentiary standard in my book. And it wouldn't meet it if there was an official governing body for this illegal activity. It's like saying you robbed a bank, but not showing the money. Well, a bank might have been robbed, a car might have gone across, but who's ever to say? So Bolian, I believe he did it, but not for the reasons he stated, certainly not because of the evidence he shared. He had, if you look at the 6 types of evidence, I think he had 3. And, it is what it is. The hoax from April Fool's from a few weeks ago was kind of my friendly jab at him, but I did it with love. And
we'll get into the hoax in a couple minutes.
I think he recognized that it was with love because, he has displayed all the professionalism and seriousness and competence and knowledge of precisely the kind of person who could have done exactly what he says. And putting together what I know outside of the public realm, I absolutely do believe he did it. There's a sufficient doubt in my mind, but that's for history to determine and not really relevant in this conversation. The bottom line is, if I was organizing cross-country race and a guy showed up with Bolian's time, not good enough.
Right. Okay, so now, having said all that, do you think rallies? So you think that rallies itself has changed drastically over the past years? The gumball and bull run and things of that nature. What's your take on that?
Well, they've changed very much, and Bolian and I again were great examples of this. There was a time in 2003 when I showed up on my first gumball when a third or half the field of people people like Richard Rawlings, people like Ed Bolian, people like myself were showing up in prepped cars, deadly serious, looking for a race and prepared for it, having devoted 90% of their time, if for 6 months, outside of work, preparing. And you could enter the Gumball in 2003 for $14,000. Look at it today, $100,000. For absolutely not. It's senseless.
Nothing warrants that.
Nothing warrants it. You and the three of us could sit here at this table and get 10 friends together and package that trip and on that Gumball takes ourselves, and for a fraction of the price. So
very small fraction of that.
Yeah, as the price has gone up year over year, and as the authorities have clamped down and reduced the routes that are possible in many countries, the event they've shortened the driving miles. The Gumball 3000 used to be 2,500 to 3,000 miles in 5 days. Now it's probably half that, maybe a little more.
It's more about the lifestyle and the partying.
Absolutely. Now, as the price has gone up, there's an inverse correlation to the age and driving experience of the people that are going, and as a result, you have a much more dangerous type of event. And as the pool of potential entrants has gotten smaller, the price has increased even more in order to generate the same level of revenue from 100 entrants at 14. Now you got 10 or 15 paying guys and a few celebrities who show up checkpoint to checkpoint. So you have people who are doing short runs. So a guy who's going to do 1 day of a rally instead of 6 is going to drive a lot faster because he's got 1 day to prove himself to himself and his friends. The guys who are doing 6, they're slowing down in the later days. They're tired. They've been through more. So, the Gumball was both safer and a lot more fun back then because you had people who wanted to go year over year and weren't going to kill themselves or anyone else. On the last one I did in 2007, and I went to the 2008, 2009 parties and just hung out with some of the people, I got to say, and coming from me, it may sound hypocritical, but it's a cautionary observation. I was concerned. I could never go back. So many people had a target on my back because of the reputation I built being a very aggressive and occasionally unsafe person myself, that if I'd gone back, that would have further increased the aggression of guys who had watched my own videos from 5 years earlier. And so I was glad not to go, really glad. I miss it. But it's something that for me is no longer possible anywhere.
It's funny that you say that because I won Bull Run in 2011, 2012. And after those 2 years, I had a huge target on my back. And these people were preparing and planning multiple cars and pranks and all sorts of things. And they never got to execute it because I basically, stayed away from it. I felt that I pushed the envelope enough. I was very fortunate to not have any catastrophes myself on any of the rallies, having survived them to a certain extent. And I just didn't want to push the envelope. And, now I organize my own rallies, and I've learned a lot from being on these rallies on what not to do, basically, and how not to put people in that type of situation. If you were going to do another rally, is there one that you would choose, or would you choose to do something on your own?
Well, I did do this rally called Londino, which was kind of a scavenger hunt kind of event without time being a factor, where you had to go find objects and do stuff like that. And just, I just learned that you were doing something very much like that. That was the most fun I ever had in an event, and the only event I'd go back to today. It was wonderful. The people who went were terrific, and there was driving. It was unnecessary. No one cared how fast you got there. But it was in Europe. It was a different culture. That was a great event. The idea of taking scavenger hunts and putting it in cars is a wonderful idea. And I'm surprised that no one's done it here until you started doing your event.
Right, which we had one back in October. We have another one this coming October, Columbus Day weekend. It's not a full week of people's time, so it's 4 days, 3 nights, and it's based on a scavenger hunt. And it attracts a lot of high net worth people and exotic cars. And it's competitive, but without using your car as the competitive tool. It's more using your mind and the car as transportation.
Well, since my girlfriend's here, can I just ask, would you like to go with me on this event? Because let me tell you, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Sure, let's go. Sounds like fun.
Done.
It's it's kind of sad that the
rallies have taken that turn.
Yeah, because it wasn't necessary. And look back at the types of people who used to do those events, the old gumballs. I met Charles Morgan Jr. on that event. Look at Richard Rawlings. Like, he's not just the guy doing Fast and Loud. This is not some redneck. This guy's a smart guy. He was prepared. This guy was really serious, and his press and who he's become in the media with his show has totally masked the degree of seriousness this guy's bringing to the table.
Oh yeah, my first bull run he was on. He was very
this guy
serious.
Is deadly serious about this stuff. So the people I met in the 03 Gumball, many of them were exactly the kind of people who would have been perfect if there were still a Cannonball Run or US Express race. And so the Gumball today, and I don't know about the Bull Run, but these rallies no longer attract the kind of person who would do those things.
Correct.
And where do those people go? They've aged out, although
it's a dying breed.
Yeah, they've aged out, or they're having a conversation like the two of or three of us at this table now. There's no event for us, and even the potential for such an event to take place falls under the cloud of the political and legal situation created by the rallies. Brock Yates himself, and I'm going to take some flack for this, is partially responsible for the creation of the very events that have ruined the Cannonball name. Because, the Gumball Rally came out in 76, followed by the movie Cannonball. Now, the Gumball Rally movie is, in fact, the most realistic depiction of such illegal races. The Cannonball Run movie came out 5 years later and is nothing like the real race. Brock Yates, after 1975, there was a Time magazine cover story about the Cannonball. Brock Yates didn't do another Cannonball for 4 more years. 79 then happened. And in 79, and if you meet a Cannonballer today, did the 79 race, they'll tell you people were angry. They were really pissed off. Brock Yates had a completely public start. There was like a band. It was hundreds of people were there, and that was why Cannonball ended. It was a colossal show, and it would have been impossible ever to hold it again. And then he was coming out with a movie, so it was very important.
Right. I mean, when it started, it was all a very big secret society.
Big secret. I mean, think about it. I mean, right now, Richard Rawlings cannot go on a rally.
Correct.
Why? Legally, either he has contractual restrictions, liability, the show, X, Y, and Z. When the Cannonball Run movie was greenlit, God, who knows what year, 78, 79, 80, you better believe the studio came down with a similar contractual restriction prohibiting any future Cannonballs. Now, if you were the average Cannonball entrant in 79 and you enjoyed it, let's suppose you were a core Cannonballer from 75 or 71 and you were part of this secret society, you wanted to keep doing this forever. And so Brock Yates, I'm quite sure that he was not sharing equity ownership in the movie with all the entrants. So you're one of the entrants. What are you getting out of this movie? Nothing. So it came to an end. And so that's where the Express came from. And the Express's, Richard Doherty's adherence to the kind of gentleman's code of keeping it secret and not mining it for money is to be commended, in much like if a group of serial killers were going to make a documentary about each other but not use names and never market it. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, this is all a joke. It's not a sport. It's a game. And,
absolutely. It's a big game of chess.
Yeah, and it's a game with sports, the consequences of a sport. And that's the thing that rallies don't recognize or respect.
So, all right. So we talked about your history on it in the US Express and Cannonball. Now, let's go back a few weeks ago to one of the greatest modern-day automotive hoaxes that was played on the automotive community. But, interesting enough, it was launched a day early in some countries. Now,
it was April 1st in Japan.
Yes, in some countries. Interesting enough, Alex played a huge hoax. I'm not sure if everybody knows about it, but you can look it up on thetruthaboutcars.com. And this hoax was the fact that he had successfully crossed the country, breaking his record, Ed Bolian's record, in 26 hours and 28 minutes. Now, we talked about this on the last podcast, and interesting enough, I've known Alex quite some years, and as soon as this rumor started to mill, I received a call from Ed Bolian, who said, have you heard about this? And I said, actually, I haven't. And he said, well, you know Alex, and you know a bunch of his friends. Well, see what you could find out about it. And it wasn't that Ed was concerned that his record was broken. I believe that he was a bit shaken that somebody had actually broke it by that much. And
That's two of us.
so, yeah. So I did a little bit of fact finding. I actually spoke to Alex about a couple of things, and I was relaying things, and there was like this whole, it was a small circle of people where there was like all this fact finding going on, and there was an article that Alex wrote on The Truth About Cars all about this miraculous feat, which was so descriptive, so well thought out, and it was so ridiculous in many aspects. But the aspects that were so ridiculous were just, they were clouded by the fact that he was holding a GPS in a picture that showed the actual 26 hours, 28 minutes. And it was not evident at first that anything was a hoax, because it was March 31st here in the States on the East Coast. And so we'll get into a little about that. What made you even consider the hoax?
So, Greg Ledet, for anyone who doesn't know, like Ed Bolian, is a guy who was calling me for several years after my record and asking me, pretending to be a journalist, for information about the record, claiming to be writing a book. Right before Ed Bolian called me, literally hours before Ed Bolian called me to confess he wasn't a journalist, to confess that he actually just broken my record, I received a call from Greg Ledet, a guy who confessed that he was not a journalist, saying that he had almost broken my record. And at the time, I thought it was the same guy using two different names. I had no idea what was happening. I just couldn't figure it out. I was also really hungover. I was sitting in my apartment in California, and I thought to myself, if anyone had gone cross country and they were calling me using fake names and lying to get my help and information on how to do it, and they really understood the book and all the proof and evidence, why didn't they call me and ask me to stand at the Portofino Inn and just be there and welcome me?
Right, and to witness it.
So I didn't believe either of these guys. And then Ledet called me back, and we got to know each other a little bit. And Ledet didn't believe Bolian either. And Ledet, I'll let Ledet speak for himself, but apparently went down and met Bolian and saw Bolian's evidence. And Bolian wouldn't send me the evidence, and that's up. We can get into that if you want to. But Ledet came in right behind me. So, I got to know Ledet a little bit over a couple of years. And he seemed to be, I understandably disappointed that he had not broken my record. He came within minutes. And I said to him, Ledet, why are you disappointed? You are one of the greatest drivers ever in the history of such things. You're the second fastest guy ever, and now the third fastest guy ever, right. Beating Dan Gurney, beating hundreds of people, beating these. It's a huge thing.
Wait, I don't even know much about Greg Ledet. When did he actually do this?
Ledet, he did it the same weekend as Ed Bolian, or the weekend before.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah.
And what kind of car was it in?
I don't know. You should get Ledet on the show.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk to Ledet.
At the time that I went across, I considered myself, I think people considered me, the nerdier, slower, more scientific guy in the car with David Maher, who was really the master driver. Right. After talking to Bolian, it seemed that Bolian was kind of the equivalent of me in his car, because David Black, his co-pilot, is a tech guy who coincidentally owns a GPS tracking company. And Ledet seemed to be a guy who really understood more about GPS and tech and everything than I ever did. It really seemed like the next generation of guy. And so, after getting to know him a little bit, I got this idea for this April Fool's hoax. I thought, what Bolian claimed, I think in more than one place, that GPS screenshots couldn't be faked. So I had a chat with Ledet, and he's like, yeah, it can be faked. So I called up some guys at Jalopnik and said, would you be interested in this hoax story? And the word was, yeah. And they don't really want to go near records in cross-country driving because it's unsafe, it's illegal, it's immoral. And so I thought the perfect guy is Jack Baruth, Truth About Cars. This Jack Baruth's got a little bit of the spirit of Brock Yates in him. He's real contrarian. He's brilliant. I think he's the best automotive writer alive. And I said, would you run this story? He said, let me see the story first. So I said, okay. And I thought, people don't read past 300-400 words. So I'm going to make the first 3,000 words deadly serious.
And they were.
And then the second 3,900 will be absolute nonsense. And Baruth said, too long, didn't read. People aren't going to read that far. I didn't have the technical knowledge any longer to develop the statistics and spreadsheets or even fake the GPS data, but Greg Ledet did. And so we spoke, and I did as much writing as I could. Ledet did the lion's share of hard data research. He picked the car. He picked the time.
Can I just tell you one thing about the car?
Want to talk about the car?
Yes, I want to talk about the
possible.
car. Because I'd love to build it if you're interested. That's number one. Number two is T-Minus really has no interest in this whole cross-country time and rally or anything. But when it came down to the car, he was glued to the facts of the car. T?
That is true.
Look,
he was mesmerized by it.
Ledet and I were on instant messenger and phone calls like round the clock for 2 days, crying tears of laughter as we added more and more insane options to this car. And I mean, he came up with stuff it didn't even occur to me. The steering by wire system, I thought about doing 2 steering wheels for years. I didn't know what it would take. He figured it out. And the Spy Hunter mods and those other stuff. I mean, all night long. In fact, Rebecca here was with me that night and all that whole week with another friend from out of town, Scott Hull, who's a car guy and an audio guy, helping me edit, the article, trying to keep a straight face. Was this going too far? And Infiniti Q52 steering wheels, feasible. In fact, if you were going to break that record, the car that we described in the article would be perfect. It's a sleeper. It's even Infiniti doesn't. I mean, they don't think they can sell it because no one believes in Infiniti would be that good, that fast. But if I spoke to Infiniti at the car show, they were disappointed. I didn't ask them in advance. They said they would have loved to participate. They would have blasted the press release globally. They
would probably build the car.
The Q50 Eau Rouge, which is that car, it's a Q50 with the GTR driveline, was canceled, and it's too bad because it's the perfect car. I would add a third steering wheel, and I would even add for the driver and the passenger some kind of a toilet system built into the front seats. Why should they even have to get out of their seats at all?
I feel like that sometimes in bed. I feel like when I wake up in the morning, why can't I just have like a hole in the bed that goes to some type of storage system, and I could just pee while I'm in bed and go back to sleep?
Would you like to hear my favorite driving catheter story?
Sure.
So would I.
I don't want to hear how you inserted it though.
It's not an insertion. It's more of a clasping mechanism. Your face, T-minus.
Fuck, bro.
Tills 1,000 visits to the bathroom.
I love going to the bathroom.
Well, who doesn't?
No, I really love it. Yeah, I'm shot.
T-Minus has been drinking again.
Yes.
For the podcast.
Logically,
It's okay though, because I'm Irish. We do this shit.
Several drivers on the US Express had a catheter system. They had 2 tubes that went into a common bag. When I did the Baja 1000, I wore a catheter that went down my pant leg. The floor of the car had like a semi-open floor plan, so it just went out the floor of the car.
Sick. Tell me that isn't the dopest feeling. I had it when I was in surgery.
It's awesome.
Yeah, you could be in bed. You're talking to somebody. You have to take a pee.
I'm surprised.
Nobody cares.
That people don't
Nobody even
wear
knows.
catheters in general, like while mountain climbing or
Yeah, it's super
yachting.
awesome.
Yeah, it's completely obvious.
But no good going in, no good coming out. But while it's in there, dope.
Well, you and I had different models of catheter because the $4.99 Baja 1000 model is just like what does it look like? It looks like a sock with a tube coming out the other end, and it comes in 2 sizes.
I'm sure it was still painful going in.
It was okay. I didn't.
You just like that shit.
I wanted to keep it actually for a few days because it's so convenient.
Super convenient.
Yes, it's so
super convenient.
So convenient.
I don't understand why they don't make diapers for people our age.
That's funny you should mention it because there was discussion before we went cross country against the 3104 record about a Depends diaper system. Now, I think it was 2010. There was a NASA astronaut candidate. Remember the story? There was a female candidate. She was having a love triangle with a male astronaut and another female astronaut.
Good for her.
And she, I think, was fired. I don't remember the details. She was fired from NASA because she was stalking this male astronaut she was having an affair with, and he decided to go stay with his wife. And she drove, I think, maybe not cross country, but almost all the way cross country, doing drugs while wearing a pair of Depends.
Would have been sick if she fucking beat your record.
Yeah, right. It would have been. And she was wearing Depends the whole way, and she was arrested wearing the Depends at some point. And yes, it would.
Now, see, that's something interesting because I don't think there's ever been a female driver.
On the contrary. Okay, so on the 19...
Well, yes, maybe in the US Express, I believe.
In the US Express, there was a all-girl team, Monique Damone and her stepdaughter, Becky Damone. Maybe I'm inverting the names. And think about that. A woman and her stepdaughter, the same age, were in a Mercedes 6.9.
That's hot.
I think they came in third place, I think. And their time was faster than Dan Gurney's time.
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, the second place team... I can't remember who it was, gave their trophy to the Damone women. And I think they're still alive and live in New York, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
These two are cool. And they were wearing these checkered sweaters. These are really, really cool women.
They had the cutest outfits.
Yeah.
Hook me
They
up.
were spectacular.
Yeah, he's in.
Yeah.
We should,
He's in.
we should look them up. I'm trying to think. I mean, there was. I'm trying to think in the modern. No, I mean, I guess the modern crew. I don't know. When I had a list of drivers that go across country, on the second run, the reconnaissance run in 3446.
Right.
The second run failed in April 2006, and then my co-pilot John Goodrich quit. He said he wouldn't go again, and I made a list of people I wanted to interview and ask about going with me. On that list were 2 women. I didn't know them very well, and I never got around to asking them. But one of them was Jody Kidd, whom I knew from the Gumball, who was a trained, Maserati factory driver in some races. But we didn't have a good, close friendship, so it just didn't seem appropriate to ask her.
Right.
I spent a lot of time in a car with someone. They should give trophies for patience.
Oh, you're not kidding. I've been through that. It's tough. I mean, I one of the rallies, my first leg, my co-pilot said, and he's English, so he's like, mate, just pull the fucking car over and I'm going home. And he got on the phone, called his assistant. He's like, get me a fucking flight from Scottsdale. I'm coming home right now. Fuck this guy. And I mean, we got into a brutal fight on the first leg of the rally, but then smooth sailing. And,
that's kind of the joke or the irony of doing a cross-country run is that there are always guys, Europeans who... think that they can come to America and drive like that. But no one from Europe has any experience in spotting police cars because police cars don't follow pursuit and run traps like they do in the United States. Mm-hmm. There's stationary camera systems. Occasionally there's laser units like in Austria. But as a rule, they have no experience with police rolling in traffic looking for speeders. It's not part of the culture. I had a guy who came to the United States that I drove from New York to St. Louis with him to see if he was capable of doing it. But he didn't even recognize headlights. He just no experience with that type of driving.
It's totally different from overseas.
Totally different. Additionally, if you're pulled over for speeding in the United States and you have a foreign passport, the risk is, depending on the cop you meet, either much greater or much worse for being arrested. If a cop's pissed off, he'll take you in because you're foreign. But the next cop might say you're foreign. Fuck it, just go.
Right. Which, there were a couple of people on the different rallies who used their international license for that reason. And sometimes it does work against them.
You want to talk about actually an interesting footnote to this. If you want to talk about a sport that benefits, not a sport, a sports-like group of criminals committing criminal acts who get away with it, it's the whitest group of guys with the most money doing the stupidest thing ever are the people who do this kind of thing. Can you imagine if you were, I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, when's the last time anyone who wasn't like a white, 30 to 45-year-old man with money went and did such a thing? If you were pulled over in a sports car, seriously.
Nobody black or Hispanic or Asian would make it out of their own neighborhood.
Well, actually, probably they're too smart to do this because this is a completely decadent and idiotic thing to be doing.
It really is dumb.
Just think how ironic and odd that is. On the other hand, I do believe that there was a cannonball team where there was a black man and a white man dressed like priests in a Ferrari. I think that might actually have been true, but I never bothered to research it. And if so, they are, no matter what time they got, the ballsiest guys who ever lived.
I don't know, man. Wingsuit is sick.
It was a wingsuit cannonballer?
No.
I'm
wingsuit.
Okay,
bananas.
Gauzy's guys ever do the cannonball.
Oh, cannonball, right.
Listen, if I was part of
Isle of Man, bananas.
Bananas.
Yeah.
If I was ballsy enough to wear a wingsuit, I would deliberately, then I would want to go out and start doing wingsuit stuff like in a major urban area. That's the corollary to Cannonball in a wingsuit. Wingsuit in the canyons out where you're not gonna hit anybody. Fine. Try that. Say
like
on the hillside,
Midtown.
Of like a city,
Midtown. Hot.
Or Rio de Janeiro, where it's like the city is like goes up the mountain. Why don't you wingsuit down, literally,
Like right off the statue of Jesus.
Yeah, or San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'll show you a wingsuit competition. Being a tough guy.
You can put on your wig and be a wingsuit.
All right, listen. One more thing about the whole hoax.
I love you, T-minus.
Thank you, brother. Thank
Few
you.
words, all heavy.
Thank
Yeah,
God someone
very.
does. God damn it.
I know you're loved. Just
Shit.
remember that.
I'm down.
Why isn't there
as
like
far as-
stunt scuba diving? Well, there is. It's cave diving. It's cave.
Yeah, cave diving is nuts.
Yeah. But try that with, say, a motorized sled. I see some cave racing. And
Let me just ask you one thing about the hoax.
Yeah.
Before we get off that topic.
Sure.
Was there any backlash to it at all? Was there any negativity?
A couple of people said douche, but they would have said douche whether it was real or not. So it's not hoax specific. One friend, who shall remain nameless, because I really do love him, is not let it go. And that's amazing because, I fool some pretty big people, including
you
members of the media.
People
And
taking a good fun.
Listen, I have a buddy at Popular Mechanics.
Popular Mechanics.
Yeah, and I
man.
felt really bad about lying to him. But this was not about the hoax. It really was about the fact that none of things gets fact checked. I mean, Bolian's story got published having passed like 2 people and an anonymous source. Like you couldn't run a story in the New York Times like that. You couldn't. Look at, when's the last time a car magazine, this is my retraction article the next day, I talked about this and I got some good feedback, actually some very positive feedback about it. Look at the Toyota recall story. How come that's not the front page story on Car and Driver?
Right.
Real automotive stories, like, about real safety discussions, they're never the front page news because, that's not what the magazines are about. So where does someone go if they want to read real automotive news, real car news? You have to go online. So
Right.
you have the truth about
Everything's
cars.
online.
Yeah, and you have really deep research. You have Jalopnik. You have sites that are not just automotive news. They have automotive stories.
Here's something interesting. Ed Bolian, for days from the announcement, for the next 24 to 48 hours, was trying to debunk everything that was in the article.
Right.
And we were bouncing things back and forth. You and I had spoken. I had spoken to one of the guys from Jalopnik, and we were going back and forth. And the New York Auto Show came, and then all of a sudden, Ed Bolian sent me a snapshot of him holding a GPS, and I think it said 24 hours and 11 minutes. And then I said to myself, I guess Ed Bolian can
Fake
it.
Yes.
But not that I firmly believe that he did it in 28 hours and 50 minutes.
I also do.
And I have no reservations against that. But then when he turns around and debunks it by showing me a picture of the GPS, you start to say,
Shit, Bigfoot doesn't exist.
things that make you go,
By the way, guys, okay, I spoke to a source who is intimately familiar with the programming of mobile applications pertaining to location and GPS tracking devices, who told me it would be very difficult to fake a GPS track. But Greg Ledette showed me exactly how one would do that. Greg Ledette is not a coder, and yet he figured out how to do it with a Faraday cage and multiple pieces of hardware by putting a cell phone inside a Faraday cage and then tricking it with fake locations and then dumping that data up to a server like Waze and having a fake track. I asked this program.
So smart.
I asked the man I know who is intimately familiar with location-based applications whether it would be harder to fake the data or fake the drive or do the drive. He's like, well, Alex, only you would know that. And I didn't know until last week how easy it was. Well, not easy. Ledette would tell you it's not easy to fake it, but it's possible.
It's possible.
Whereas
Right.
it's very hard to drive cross country in 2850. So using Occam's razor, what's more likely? Data fakery or the drive? Now, it would take someone intimately familiar with location data and tracking. What a coincidence. Dave Black owns a data GPS tracking company. But I do believe they did it.
Right.
And for reasons I can't even ever make public. But among the ones I can't make public is because they have absolutely all the professionalism and seriousness and demeanor and intellect of the people
Absolutely.
who can do this. And let me add one more thing. I gotta say something nice about Bolian now. Not because I'm a nice guy or he's a nice guy, because it's true. The history of such events, Cannonball and Express, it is a mandatory tradition that whoever's time gets beaten calls the next faster guy a liar. Okay, if you don't call the guy who beat you a liar, you're not part of the club. You're just not. So it almost doesn't matter what I say because I have to, for honor's sake, say that Bolian. I don't know, and that's part of the part of the culture,
part of the camaraderie between everybody,
and which is why. And he and I said this to him, and we laugh about it, and points to him for acting like a man who did do it, and by saying, Alex, thanks. And that's why the hoax to me was wonderful because he then said to me, "Are you really? Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Come on!" So I was thrilled to confess it was a lie because it brought the whole thing full circle. Yeah,
it was definitely a great hoax. There are still people to this day that believe you did it in 26 hours and 28 minutes.
I still have I get messages about that saying, Alex Roy. Obviously that's your cover story. The hoax is the cover story, right? And there must be a secret society of guys who know it's real but don't go public because you're all going together every year and no one knows. Which, of course, if that were true, I wouldn't even confess here.
So it's still your cover story.
But let me tell you, that's one of the benefits of being kind of a prankster and a hoaxster is that I'm at a point now where I don't care about the time or anyone breaking my time. I like to spend time with people like-minded like myself. I love reading there are several secret cannonball discussion groups on Facebook, and it's great. The conversations are fascinating and educational, and I've learned more about GPS and tracking and driving there and among 20 guys than anywhere else. And it's actually led to meeting some of these people that I never met any other way. And these are really smart guys. Not one of these people, in my mind, is dangerous. In fact, if they're dangerous, it's because they are way ahead of the curve of police in terms of what they could get away with if they actually wanted to commit a real crime, like, say, smuggling or bank robbery. They'd get away with it. When I was
Maybe we should do that instead.
Very intelligent people. At least we could make money off that.
Yeah.
Because you certainly can't make much money off of breaking a record coast to coast.
No,
Listen, let me drive.
You cannot really monetize
He'll plan it out, and you'll get the logistics of the route.
Well, when I was at the FBI Academy years ago, invited to speak in 2008, the man who introduced me had said something that was so flattering. He said, our next speaker is Alex Roy, about whom it's been said, he and his team never have so few accomplished so much on behalf of so few.
True, very true.
Because it's a nonviolent and unprofitable crime, which is the silliest and of all crimes.
It really is. I mean, and to people that don't understand it, we just look like a bunch of raving, maniacs that are just, people are dumbfounded. Like, why would you ever in a million years do that? I hear it from people all the time. When I post my videos of getting pulled over or arrested and all different things, I hear it all the time. Like, why would you even do that? Don't you have things better to do with your time and money? And the truth of the matter is, I don't.
Holy shit.
And I really, truly enjoy it. A few of us do.
I got to go back to Rick Doherty a second, about whom not enough can be said about how interesting and fascinating this man is. He said in one of the discussions in one of these online groups, he said, what is this obsession with time? No one times people at Mount Everest, yet people still climb it.
Valid point.
And this is what's missing from the culture of rallies. And this is the impetus by which, if there is ever to be another cross-country event with, say, under 10 people, that is going to be the core mantra of it.
True. I like that.
Oh, my God. You want his autograph too, Seth?
I already have it.
Jesus Christ.
I have it from many years ago when I was just a
Why don't you tell him how broke you are? Tell him.
I am broke. I'm very broke.
You guys ever listen to the Dennis Miller show on the radio ever?
No. All
right, so what are you thinking of Dennis
I
Miller?
listen to NPR.
Well,
that counts.
Dennis Miller had a great segment where he has a what's the bass player from Kiss? What's his name?
I don't know.
Come on.
Gene Simmons?
Gene Simmons. He has a Gene Simmons.
I just know because he has a long tongue.
So
and he's Jewish, by the way.
I like women with long tongues, not men. Let's clarify.
Gene Simmons called in one time, and if you know anything about Gene Simmons, this guy cannot stop hawking Gene Simmons merch. Like, it's all he wants to talk about. So Dennis Miller, somebody in Dennis Miller's staff hired a Gene Simmons impersonator to call into the show from time to time and basically say this: Dennis, it's so great to be on your show again. But before I talk about the topic of the day, I just want to let you know that I'll be selling T-shirts autographed by my second cousin, whose handwriting resembles my own, next Tuesday at the Topanga Canyon Strip Mall. They'll be available for $9.95, but for people who use the code word Love Gene Simmons, $9.95. And by the way, next Thursday, my godson will be performing greatest hits of Kiss cover bands in a jazz and klezmer style at a strip mall in southern Florida. And by the way, he'll be selling tickets for only $19.95. Also, a Kiss tribute band of which I own 50% of the royalties is performing, and he just goes on for an hour. And that's how I feel whenever you crack a joke about Seth and I, because I want to let you know that copies of my book are still available for $19.95 on Amazon.
Holy shit,
but for
bro.
$24.95, signed copies are available. You can buy it for less than a cent in certain outlet stores on Amazon.
Yo, can I get
but
a
if
free-
you do so,
Can I get 12 free microfibers with that?
No.
I'm also selling shirts I wore once in 2007, still sweat stained and unwashed, for only $8.95. However, for the low price of $7.95.
Holy shit.
We could do a whole infomercial on this. Oh, too funny. So now you're basically a retired rally driver.
It's like a serial killer who's on break.
Yes. Okay.
You know,
So you're currently not committing any crimes
no.
to speak of in a car.
No.
Vehicular.
No. In fact, I have a almost perfectly clean driving record.
Nice.
I never break the speed limit. In fact, now I only drive slow cars, always.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you
That's
say that.
a crime.
Because after all my legal troubles across the New York State line, I do have a clean New York State driver's license myself.
That's funny because I'm launching a new legal advisory service for people who have speeding tickets. Alex Roy's Police Driving Academy and Legal Defense Service for only $49.95.
And how much is it per minute on your 900 number? And he will talk to you in that voice for only $1.95 a minute.
It was suggested to me back when I had my C- fame, which is the highest it ever got, that I do launch the Alex Roy driving app, which would just show the speed limit, and then have and if you got a ticket, you would tap it and give you the phone number of the nearest lawyer. I get a kickback. That was a great idea.
That actually is a great idea.
Not a bad idea.
That actually is a great idea.
Also,
You heard it first on the CarLifestyle podcast.
another great thing that was floated to me was I went to a BMW meet, and I was so flattered by this. Like 50 guys, all in their 20s, were taking the sun visors off the interiors of their car and asked me to sign their visors. So I thought a really fun gag would be I would open the little door to the mirror, and on the door I'd write "Open in case of police traffic stop," and behind the mirror I'd say 1. Hands on the wheel. 2. Dome light. 3,
That's hot.
Don't email me. And somebody saw this online, and people would mail me their sun visors and ask me to
Really?
fill it out and sign them. I think that'd be a great, aftermarket option for your BMW.
That'd be interesting. So tell us your best.
I'm telling you, it's good.
Tell us your best cop story, your best pullover story.
Well, it's the evidence story, but it's kind of,
I think I've heard that one.
I tell you, I'll tell it. Listen, I love telling the evidence story, but I have a much shorter one that I never tell, which is a friend of mine from when I was prior to 5th through 8th grade. One of my good friends, Patrick Arnold, was one of my best friends, and he passed away in his sleep 2 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
It was a long time coming, I think, and it was a second friend of mine that I lost from that era of my life. And I had just acquired this Morgan 3-wheeler. So I was wearing a black suit and a black tie, leaving the funeral home on the Upper East Side. And, what do you do, when something bad happens and you're in a car? You vent a little bit, you act out. So I was, weaving down Broadway.
In a
Fifth
Morgan.
Avenue, in a Morgan 3-wheeler.
In a Morgan 3-wheeler, mind you.
In a black suit and a black tie after a funeral. And, every ticket I've ever gotten I deserved. And this one, well, I got pulled over. Because I had tried to indicate a very illegal turn, even it doesn't indicate it would have mattered, and I'd broken the turn signal indicator off the column of the car, and I'd thrown it over my shoulder, and when I was pulled over, the police officer approached the car and handed me the turn signal indicator and said, "Did you lose this?" Because I had thrown it over my shoulder onto the windshield of the police car behind me. So...
Well done. Well done.
He's like, "Where are you going? What's going on here today?" I'm like, "Well, I just left my friend's funeral." Like, really? And the other cop says, "So what restaurant you work at?" I'm looking at my outfit, like the maitre d'. I said, well, I'm coming from your funeral, and they didn't believe me. And then I said, look, my friend just died. I took the car out. I'm having a bad day. They said, you know something? And you have a ticket for failure to indicate, and you can bring the turn-signal indicator to court. You can hand it to the judge, see what he says. Good luck with that. So
That's rough.
I got a receipt from Manhattan Motorsports, Bobby Singh. He replaced the indicator, and with a letter saying that it was defective. And I went to court, and I had on my iPad a picture of the car, and I had this receipt of the indicator. I went up to the judge. The cop was there laughing because actually he was really sweet, and he didn't think I was guilty. He just had to give me a ticket for something. And they got with the judge, and I handed the judge the iPad. He's like, I can't look at that. It's like, no electronic media is admissible as evidence. And so I'm like, all right, here's the receipt. He's like, what's this for? I'm like, broken turn signal. He's like, what kind of car is it? I try to show him the picture. It's like, inadmissible. What is it? I'm like, it's a Morgan. It's like, Morgan? Broken indicator? Guilty.
Wow.
Welcome to New York City.
So, yeah, that was unfortunate.
So you still have the Morgan.
Yes, turned new to now. Now I just put my arm out like a cyclist because legally a motorcycle.
Right, legally it's a motorcycle.
So I just put my arm out. So.
And you were saying over dinner that car is just a blast.
Listen, I mean,
Actually, he said that car is incredible at 20 miles an hour.
Oh, no. Okay, it's incredible at every speed. Or on American Idol, when someone sings and Simon Cowell doesn't know what to say, and they ask him his opinion, he usually says, unbelievable. Could be good, could be bad. It's unbelievable. And that's what the Morgan's about. It doesn't matter. It's like it's visibility, yes.
I
Brakes.
drive something similar.
What do you have?
Fuck, we have to talk about it?
72 Buick.
Shit, no. 1989 Honda CRX SI.
I learned to drive stick on that car. Oh, it's an awesome car.
Ironically, Seth had one also.
I had an
With
86.
a plastic rear window, like
Yeah.
the tinted black band in the back
Yes.
of the trunk. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that car.
But
With
it's
respect to me that I actually
it's-
know it, I'm not lying to you.
no, absolutely. It's
See,
500.
he automatically assumes that we're just pretentious assholes that have always driven.
No, but you are a
Mercedes,
pretentious
BMW,
asshole.
Porsche, Jaguars.
But it's 550 horsepower and weighs 1,700 pounds.
Can you please take me for a
And
ride in
it's
that car?
stupid.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Is it cosmetically stock or is it
Let me
obvious?
show you a picture of it.
Please do.
He calls it his TMINUS Monster CRX.
Yes,
awesome.
Because it did 9.8 quarter at 146.
Impressive.
Yeah, not bad. And it's just obnoxious. I mean, listen, if you're driving a
The car matches the owner.
458, absolutely. If you're driving a Ferrari 458 and you get beat by somebody in 06, you say, all right, the guy has a lot of money in the car, but at the end of the day, I'm driving a Ferrari.
Right.
You get beat by a
a
fat
CRX,
guy
in a
in a CRX,
Yes.
you go home and kick your dog.
Yeah,
It upsets you.
There's
And I
been a
like
lot of
that.
people that have kicked their dogs, I should say.
You just reminded me of this dream I had a few weeks ago, which really messed me up. Which
Uh-oh, his girlfriend is laughing.
it's
Yeah, that's a
Wait a
problem.
second.
So
obviously.
It was a dream or a nightmare?
It was a nightmare. It
was a nightmare.
Cold sweat.
Were aliens involved?
My whole life, I'm always going to be like the kid in like 8th grade, the Metallica jacket, kind of fat, no friends.
full on rally lights. The light bar at the top is for tailgaters.
That is.
It's a monster.
That's awesome. Dude. That's it. Dude. That's awesome. So in my heart, I'm always like the weird like loner fat outsider kid, in like my high school listening to like metal. Like I'm like I was like the trench coat mafia guy. Like in my heart, people tell me I wasn't like that, but that's how I felt. So later when I would take flack for dressing like a cop and having a weird sense of humor and being a shaved head, and people think I had a fetish, my defense was always the Eminem defense, because the end of 8 Mile, he's like, yeah, he disarms the other rapper. He's like, yeah, my mom's a whore, I got a small cock, I'm white and
Right,
poor.
right.
That's
Totally,
that's
totally.
the Alex Roy stratagem, because by admitting all my faults up front, I disarm, criticism, and therefore my life's become a lot easier. And I'm never defensive or insecure. It's just, whatever. So,
But you're also a realist.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think that is realism.
As I am.
So I had this nightmare a few weeks ago that reminded me of, I guess, your picture of your CRX just reminded me of that. So you imagine, you're in a Ferrari. This guy comes up, in a CRX and blows you away. I live in fear of, you never want to be in a position in your life, in any realm of your life, where you believe you're running your A game and you're running your D game.
Right.
And that, because if that's where you are, you're not self-aware. You haven't learned anything. You haven't learned that we're always learning. So I had this nightmare a few weeks ago where I'm at a party and Eminem walks up to me. He's like, yo, dude. I'm like, yo, Eminem? He's like, you know what your problem is, Roy? You're bringing your gay game to A game. And I'm like, dude, like, you understand, like, you're my idol. Like, I totally know my limitations. I'm bringing my slay game to my A game.
I like that.
And
I like that.
And he's like, gay game. I'm like, slay game. He's like, A game. I'm like, slay game. And then I woke up, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't really know myself. Do we ever really know?
I found myself at 31. Legit.
And that was about 15 years ago. So
Oh, relax. Seth hasn't come out of the closet yet. Really.
I'm comfortable
He's like,
there.
yo, those jeans are so fierce.
I'm comfortable there.
Of course you are.
No aliens.
Yeah.
In the closet.
Cocksucker. Anyway,
I heard sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I've spoken
We're
too
in
much.
your house. Go ahead.
I want to hear your wisdom.
I don't know wisdom. I can tell you that people told me to be myself all my life. And I always thought, man, I am myself. I am myself. And I didn't realize that until I was 31. And I said, wait a second. Let me stop dressing a certain way and listening to a certain music in a certain company. And let me stop being who I think society wants me to be. Let me just be me. This is it. I mean, I was telling Seth today, it's so funny, like when you see something super fast and super small, you label it a death trap, but everybody's body is a death trap because we're not getting out of this body alive. I don't know. It's funny.
It's deep.
My neighbor.
Deep is good. So is wet.
In my old apartment years ago, we went to war over me playing music loud, and I listened to Slayer and Metallica, Megadeth. She went crazy, and she said something to me one time, so weird. She said, "You know something? It's like when you gotta go, it's a 1 to a box." And I was like, "That's a weird thing to say to your neighbor who's making noise complaints."
You're not kidding.
Yeah.
And what I'm about to say is true and not funny. Years later, she stopped complaining, and I asked the neighbor if she was on vacation. They're like, well, she was on vacation, and she came back from Africa and acquired some peculiar flu and died, and her dog ate her.
Wow.
Holy shit.
And she had 2 big Dobermans. And
That's
and
brutal.
Here's to poodles.
and that was really what you're saying is
brutal.
absolutely true. It's like we are just vessels.
Absolutely.
And Will Wright from The Sims said something really brilliant in an interview for 3207. He says that he was always fascinated by the human mind to distinguish between tools and the body. Like, I'm using this tool, I'm using this. But when you drive, the car becomes, in essence, your body. You never say, my car had an accident. You say, I had an accident.
You're right.
I'm quoting Will
You're
Wright
right
here. And which comes back to something you brought up earlier, that, I guess, life, death, accidents. You get into a car, you behave as if it's not just a tool or an appliance, it's an extension of your body. And yet, you do things with a car you would never do if you were walking down the street. If there was an open pit of fire, you would not casually walk through it. You'd walk around it. And yet, this car, which we treat as an extension of our body, as if it is our body,
Drive right through it.
It will drive right through things on the assumption
So
that
fucking right, dude.
on the assumption that it has technologies and devices and research and engineering and things within it, inherent to it, that somehow make you invincible. And this is something you would never do, no matter, even if you were a fireman. Firemen know the limitations of the uniforms and gear they carry.
Absolutely.
And yet, even a fireman can die. It happens. But people get into cars, a brand new car, and without improving their understanding of the engineering and science that goes
Technology,
into
absolutely.
And although quantitatively, statistically, it can be demonstrated that safety technology over time has reduced fatalities of many types, most types. Fatalities are lower today than 20 years ago. There are still accidents. And the accidents that still occur are not accidents, because an accident is by definition in a car never an accident. The majority of car impacts of incidents of violence that lead to destruction of a vehicle are not accidents. An accident, by definition, is an unforeseen circumstance that is beyond our control. That's an accident. So when a building falls down, it's not really an accident because people didn't maintain it. Car crashes, and one-car accidents, the majority are driver error. And which distraction. Which goes back to the pathetic examples of people who plead not guilty to speeding tickets. They're always guilty, almost always, except in places like Ferguson where the law is used to exploit people who can't afford to defend themselves. And so in a car, you have one-car accidents, driver error, and they occur because manufacturers and the government, one or both, depending on your politics, are lazy and failing to execute their ability, whether in the marketplace through marketing education or via the law through driver's education, to close the gap between driver knowledge and driver action. And it is in that gap, that these events occur in which people are killed in cars. And of course, this failure to educate in schools about physics and failure to educate in terms of driving dynamics in physics and how technologies work is why people buy larger vehicles thinking they're safer and then have rollover accidents. The same driver, the same low skill level in a different vehicle would not roll over. And so although technology has lowered accidents overall, the accidents that still occur are now different. And the person who drives a smaller car who's struck by a larger one might not have died had both drivers been educated in physics and the nature of impact. So that's a big speech, but that's something that you just really brought up to me when you said our bodies that's all we have. And it is that this gap between...
And then everybody we meet is a temporary relationship.
Like the ownership of a car.
So I almost feel like saying to people I enjoy their company, thank you so much for spending this time with me. As opposed to, I'll see you soon. Well,
TMINUS, I'm going to pay you a huge compliment and give you some respect and some human love now. Time is the only thing that you cannot buy. You can rent it.
It's the luxury we can't afford.
Yes, and people, life isn't short. It's actually really long. You need to fill it with things like, if you must, go cross country, but make sure that you don't
drive really fast.
Make
cross
sure you
country.
haven't filled it. Make sure you haven't filled it and then die the next day. There's a lot more things to live for. Senna, in the Senna movie, he has a great speech about learning.
Excellent
and
documentary.
life and how much more he has to learn. And I'm sure what he sadly learned the hard way what the F1 doctor alluded to, which is why don't you just go fishing? Because I'm sure Senna's true dream wasn't really to win another race.
I feel it was to help humanity.
Yes, and that's what he didn't get to do, and that's the tragedy of him. It's not the accident; it's the people who loved him. And
hence the reason the entire country had that reaction to his passing.
So
interesting.
Did you see that documentary, Seth?
I actually haven't.
What?
I know. I'm gonna
tragedy.
I'm gonna get ridiculed for this.
Holy shit!
And I'll admit something else.
Yeah, what do you got?
I've never watched an F1 race.
Okay, that's not a tragedy. That's not a tragedy.
That's
See
okay.
Senna, the documentary. Honestly,
I've been meaning to see it. I've always been growing up. I love to play sports. I hate to watch them. I love to drive. I don't like watching. Racing on TV.
I love watching F1. I could do without the other forms of
racing. I like having sex. I don't watch porn.
I love porn.
It's
I
just
love porn. Holy fuck. Thank God the internet is available. Jesus, honestly, Christ.
I'd rather be a participant than a voyeur.
But you have to watch this movie because I'm not a car person at all. I've just started to get more into cars since Alex and I have been in a relationship. But I loved that movie. It's
really?
So much more than just about cars.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I honestly know nothing about it other than...
Honestly, her opinion is more valuable than either Alex or I's.
I'm going to have to go home and Netflix it.
I mean,
seriously, dude,
I really am.
I'm a filmmaker, and it's a real character piece, and as I said, it's
so well done.
It's so much more than about racing. It's
absolutely.
About this man and his work, his charitable works, and how much his country loved him, and it's so much more than just.
There's so much character in that piece.
Interesting. Once I watch it, we'll have to make it a topic.
I cried like a baby every time I watch it.
Really?
I cried also when I saw it.
Really?
Everybody I know
now
that's
I'm really
seen
intrigued.
Everybody I know
I know nothing about it. Now I'm really intrigued.
I
think you'll be moved.
I also cried during Babe, the pig movie.
Did you?
In the opening scene.
How about Bambi?
I
cried at Bambi.
Bambi?
Fuck hunters.
But I also
we can
cried
get back into that
when
shit.
The only movie I ever cried to when I was a child was E.T.
That's good.
Yeah, of course, because he doesn't believe in aliens. That motherfucker! Unfucking believable.
Last week I watched the Star Wars trilogy. We watched it together, and at the Battle of Yavin, when the X-wings deployed their attack spoilers, there was tears. There was big action, big action. And,
For all you Star Wars fans out there,
yeah, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Black Boil.
Oh, boy.
Do you want to talk about aliens for 2 minutes before we wrap this up?
Let's talk about aliens. We've
let's
touched
go.
on
Hold on.
aliens for
Hold on.
a lot of the different
Let's
podcasts.
start
We
this
can
shit.
go
Hold on.
on and on. I like to talk.
Yes.
We've got all the time in the
Hold on.
world, and the
Hold
truth
on.
of the matter is that
Yeah.
I've always been a skeptic, and this was another topic that we talked
Skeptic.
about. We
Skeptic.
actually
No.
on our
More
way.
like ignoramus.
Okay, on our way
Have
down, driving
have
down.
you heard of Arthur C. Clarke?
No, on our drive down to Atlanta.
I know you've heard of William Cooper.
Okay, listen. Driving down to Atlanta to go see Ed Bolian, this was a topic of conversation that myself and TMINUS, being stuck in a vehicle together for about 16 hours, we discussed aliens and the fact that it's not that I don't believe in other life,
Extraterrestrial
other
life
life
forms?
somewhere else. I believe there could be something somewhere else, but I have never met, nor have I ever seen proof of aliens existing here in the United States of America.
You never met Obama. Does he exist? Yeah.
Yes, he
Yeah?
does.
How about George Clooney?
I've never seen an alien interviewed on TV. I've seen George Clooney interviewed on TV.
Well,
Okay.
you don't know if you've seen an alien on TV interviewed or not.
Thank you. Fuck yes.
Until somebody
they
proves
do
that
live
somebody
amongst us.
until somebody proves that somebody is an alien from another planet, I will remain a skeptic. Just
there's
like T-Minus asked me about this whole chemtrail phenomenon
That's
bullshit.
correct.
That I certainly don't believe in. And
I almost laugh at your foolishness. Honestly.
and it's been an ongoing discussion between myself and T-Minus, and we ridicule each other going, forward day to day. So, Alex, what's your take on extraterrestrial activity?
It's just math. There are infinite number of stars, and time is infinite. If you've seen the original Carl Sagan Cosmos, the statistical likelihood.
He hasn't seen that either.
The
He's
statistical-
from Wrong Island. They don't have movies or indoor plumbing.
The statistical likelihood is that there is life. I'm of the theory that given the length of time in the history of the universe, that whatever life is out there is almost certainly not anywhere in the time scale that we are. They're probably vastly more advanced or vastly more primitive, and it might be a very long time before we meet a civilization that is anywhere in a timeline in their own development and evolutionary history that overlaps with us sufficiently closely that we can even communicate with them. And that would probably explain why there hasn't been communication yet. Either they don't want to or not sufficiently advanced to do so.
Okay, so you don't believe there's been any communication?
Oh, there could have been. I mean, but it's not directly relevant to me because I'm not aware of it. And if it exists, I'm certainly not privy to it. And if not, it's
This
inevitable.
motherfucker's face. Unfucking believable.
So, but
bro.
it's a question of math. It's not a political or religious or theoretical question. The most interesting aspect of it for me is that let's suppose they showed up tomorrow, is how.
I would shit myself.
If there's a great show, I'll call it "When Aliens Attack." It's on Netflix, like a 2-hour special about what would most likely happen if they did show up.
You and Orson Welles.
Well, generally, and when a very advanced species meets an inferior one, they annihilate it.
Right.
It'll either be great and we'll know within 10 seconds, or we're all dead within 10 seconds.
Hence the reason we step on roaches.
Correct. Assuming that they don't kill us all immediately.
Inferior and superior. No?
Okay.
Oh, God.
If they don't kill us all immediately, it'll be fun to see how modern organized religions rationalize, explain away, and make excuses for their own survival after the arrival of something which is in complete conflict with systems for which there is also no proof. But what
do you got on Area 51? Because I got chased out of there by a Black Hawk.
I got chased out of there
Helicopter.
too.
Yes!
But let me also
Fucking bonding in this bitch.
let me say this because I don't want to say that I'm an atheist. 'Cause I'm not an atheist. There is a lot of good to be taken from the basic tenets of all organized religions, which are in fact not specific to any one religion. There are basic forms of good behavior and decency and morality, which can be observed anywhere in the world, even among cultures that are utterly isolated and remote, about how people should treat other people. And in whatever spirituality I feel, it comes from that, and from what I've seen traveling, where even as an American going to places in many third world countries and Arab countries, on the gumball, for example, which is the ultimate clash of cultures, in North Africa in 2004, the war had just broken out. Almost all the Americans quit the rally because they were terrified to go to an Arab country. I had grown up, I knew French. I'm in Morocco. We're in all over the place, in remote places, and people could not have been more welcoming and kind and cool to the gumballers who stopped and said hi and bought lunch and were friendly. And the gumballers of any origin who were dicks were treated as dicks. And it's strangely, I feel more like a New Yorker than an American sometimes, because I've been to other parts of America where I felt very alien to other people. But I felt a real feeling of patriotism because the people in these places had not been the victims of any form of injustice. On the contrary, they believed in that there were better ways of doing things. Some of them were in their own home, and some of them were in places far away. And they were thrilled to meet an American. They never met one. And so the way you treat people, wherever you go, whatever you do, is the bottom line. And that's not that just doesn't just define you. It defines in the eyes of others how they see the place you came from. And that is what I hope we don't learn about aliens who want to take over.
Okay. Well, I firmly believe.
Absolutely.
believe in life that my goal is to leave a legacy, and to make my mark. And there are so many people out there who you were saying about traveling and meeting people, and my goal is to leave a mark so that someday my kids will be proud to say that who I was and what I've accomplished. And I think that goes a lot with a lot of people in this world, and and people that are blessed, such as we've been, as well as a lot of the other people that participate in these rallies. They have some sort of monetary backing in order to do these rallies. I like to associate with the people who like to leave a positive mark, and to leave their footprint in the sand that doesn't get washed away. And there's a lot of people who don't believe in that, and a lot of people who just want to party till they drop. But and that's why I enjoy doing a lot of the charitable functions that I do, in order to make a difference. But yeah,
I don't know how late you guys want to stay, but I want to bring up something interesting about automotive events and charity.
Please go ahead.
Because like in any sport, any hobby, anything where people have excess money and are having fun, there often is, if there's any decency at all, a charitable component, but they vary widely. And look, did you guys know Sean Lee, Purist?
I don't.
Okay. Here's a guy, this group, which is utterly informal, but informally led by Sean Lee. These guys do a mountain of good stuff, on the West Coast, organizing kids and toy drives. Paul Walker.
Reach out worldwide, right?
Paul Walker was a major guy in the events they were doing, and I compare that with some rallies that shall remain nameless, where like the charitable component is an absolutely tacked on. It's a sticker.
Absolutely.
It's a sticker. And I have for 10 years before I was doing car stuff, I was working for the Moth, and I did other charitable stuff. Because you can write a check. If you have extra money, you can write a check to a charity, or go to a charity ball and go to a party, or you can actually
just donate anonymously.
There's many ways to go around it.
Yes.
Go about it. But I'm a very lucky person. And the way I can sleep at night is by, trying to balance my karmic spreadsheet with the things I've done that were based on luck, the things I earned that I do based on what I earned, and being generous when I can be. And I think a lot of people are listening to this probably know damn well that these rallies with the stickers on the side, it's
a crock of shit.
Bullshit. Absolutely, man.
It's a crock of shit. It's so when you get pulled over, you say, "Oh, but we're doing this for autism."
Yeah,
it's all fucking bullshit.
Unless you brought, by the way, if you brought an autistic child who loved cars with you on the rally, you deserve to win.
I agree.
I mean, since 2007, when I started Exotics Rally, the whole premise was to get like-minded people together that enjoy exotic cars and sports cars and luxury cars, with a common goal, and we've always raised money for charity. We've had events that we don't include a charity, but we don't state it's a charity and then not give money. We've given over $150,000 in the past, 6 years.
I have an idea for one of your rallies that I shouldn't say on the podcast.
But
you should have teams pick a charity, then compete for the pot to which charity goes to. Is the team
I did one for Make-A-Wish, and we wanted to grant a wish to a
Make-A-Wish
child.
is fucking awesome.
And to grant a wish, it costs about $7,000 to $8,000, and we raised, I think, about $8,000 on this. It was a little one-day event, just to get together. We raised enough for a wish, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation gave me the option between two children and what their ailments were and who do we want to grant the wish to. And they said that every child, though, gets their wish. It's just a matter of where we wanted our particular money to get, to get donated
Allocated to, right, sure.
Right. So I put an email out to all my participants saying, do you want to give it to this girl who has this ailment or this boy who has this ailment?
Which is crazy.
And everybody was so distraught over it. Everybody sent double the money in.
Aw, that's sweet.
And we gave both wishes, which was really cool. Actually, it was a little shortfall. I made up the difference, but it was
Make-A-Wish really does give a fuck.
Yeah, it was a really good charity. One of my uncles happens to work for them down in Disney, but it was definitely a fulfilling experience. And I'm a big contributor for a lot of different charities. I believe that it's good karma, and
It is.
And I'll continue to do it, and I support other events as well that have charity fundraising. We used to do a show in Times Square.
Legitimately, absolutely.
Yeah, we used to do a show in Times Square where I shut down part of Times Square to have like an exotic car show, and then all the business people, all the businesses in the area, the Commerce Society there, shut it down. But we were raising money all those years. It was a lot of fun. It was good stuff. But we're going to close off this segment. And what we always do in order to close the show is we always have a little sounding board. We usually pick a topic and we go around and we kind of speak our minds.
And likely every week he doesn't tell me about this shit or what he's going to fucking say. So I have no fucking reference.
I'm going to just pick the topic.
All right.
And then everybody can sound off. So my topic this week is going to be about shitty automotive repair shops that overcharge.
Oh, man.
And the biggest problem that I have about that is the fact that if you pull up with an exotic or a sports car or something high-end, they tend to rape you, and they just totally take advantage of you. And, I've had that experience with a lot of different cars that I own, and the parts don't cost any more. But I don't know if there's an inherent risk involved in working on the cars. I mean, I have a shop, and whether you bring in a Nissan Maxima or a Lamborghini Aventador, I charge the same for a vinyl wrap or for clear paint protection. I just don't understand why these other shops are just hosing people left and right. Have you experienced that?
Well, no, not really, because I go to the same two shops for 15, 16 years. I've also owned the same. I own a number of cars. I won't buy a new car in any circumstances.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
You mostly have pre-owned stuff.
Yeah, I own a bunch of cars. I've owned the cars for 7 to 15 years. And I've only just for the first time in my life sold a couple of cars because the carry cost is too high. I did have actually a wonderful experience. I was in my Citroen SM. Well, I was in my 87 911 Targa on the West Coast near Stinson Beach, and I ran into a ditch, and the oil cooler was all messed up, and I nursed the car over to the nearest shop, which of course says European Mark Specialist, all brands, Italian and exotics. Like it's like a sign that you just put on the wall. And these three Armenian brothers and their mother, like playing poker, chain smoking, and drinking coffee in the back. They came out, and there wasn't a nice car in this place. It was like whatever, like an ancient 5 Series. The place didn't look that great. And I brought my car in. They looked at it, and I was ready for any number.
Did they open up the hood and look for the engine, or?
They looked. I told them it was wrong. They looked underneath, and I had to get this car back to LA like 2 days later. I had to, and so they could have quoted me anything, and I pretty much had to pay it. And
I already know.
And the guy said, I can get one. I can get the cooler for like $270, locally, and the bar that protects it is I'll just straighten out the one you've got. They'll be out the door for $325.
So
did the right thing.
That's
Yeah.
a great experience.
And I went back with my sister on SM, like a year later, and they remembered me, and these guys were terrific. And that was wonderful. And I had a lesser experience in my Porsche 928, where I called 5 or 6 places and described the problem with the electrical system, and people were quoting $3,000-$4,000, and there was a guy in Jersey that I had not gone to because he was in a very wealthy neighborhood. And his guy's Gene at Auto House in New Jersey. I took the car there on the recommendation of the prior owner, and he fixed it for $165.
Oh, that's great. See, I like hearing stories like that because I've been taken
Absolutely.
advantage of a couple of times, and a couple of times I've had great results. But now having my own shop, I just treat everybody equally because I can't stand that.
I got a recommendation for you, and by the time this podcast airs, you'll already have started doing it. So this is not going to help anyone who's listening. Don't rip this idea off because Seth TMINUS is going to run with this. We need to go, the video crew, with a perfectly operating vehicle and an Aventador or your Spiker and hit 10 repair shops and claim problems.
We could do that
Good idea.
little hidden camera situation.
And I'll go because they know me and they'll think I can afford it.
Is that Armchair or Herman Miller?
It's a garage sale.
Oh. Well, it looks like Herman Miller. And I'm a big fan of Herman Miller products.
T-minus, please stop drinking. I've got to drive home with him now.
Seth, you don't even believe in aliens, dude. You're not even like conscious with us.
Oh, boy. All right. So anyway, that was episode 6. Are we on? I think we're on 6.
I think it is 6.
Episode 6.
How long was that episode?
That was 1 hour and 40 minutes of our time.
What's standard length for you?
Anywhere
hour,
from an
hour
hour to an
10.
hour and a half.
I enjoyed every minute of it, especially the parts where I was talking.
Yes. Now we're gonna go around the room and give each other, give ourselves our own self-pity plugs. And so, if you want to start, Alex, you can say anything about any websites or Twitter addresses or
Or
anything.
Instagram or Facebook.
Instagram, Alex Roy 144. Facebook, Alex Roy 144. Periscope, Alex Roy, and my book's on Amazon, but there's many used copies. Please buy the Kindle edition. It helps pay for my vaping oil.
T-minus.
T-_NYC_CarLifestyle on Instagram. Follow CarLifestyle at CarLifestyle on Instagram, on YouTube, on Pinterest, on Tumblr, and car-lifestyle.com on the browser.
And you can follow T-minus at CarLifestyle on Pornhub as well.
What? I was like, what? I'm a star? I'm down.
I did forget to mention that my new book is coming out next year describing my most recent record and future records. It's called You Are All Cowards. And then the documentary about all these events in which I am the greatest will be coming out the following year.
I hope you spelled your correctly.
It's called First Has a Place All Its Own.
Excellent. And you can find me at exoticsrally.com, on Instagram, exoticsrally, Art of Rap NY, and also the Hunt Rally. And if you're interested in joining us on the rally in October, it's going to be October 10th through the 13th, which I believe Alex and his girlfriend will be joining us.
Absolutely.
And that's October 10th through the 13th. It's
Bex is off the fucking hook.
thehuntrally.com. Check it out online. It's affordable, it's fun, and there are cash prizes involved. So with that, we're going to close out this podcast, and that's a wrap.
Car Lifestyle.